On this episode of Locked On Angels, we're making the case that the Halo should trade, drumroll please, Taylor Ward. And the question is, for who? And the answer is, you'll find out. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our third off season here at Locked On Angels. We're here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday until about mid-December. Then we'll drop down to 3 episodes a week up until spring training, right before spring training, actually. And so we just want to give you a heads up there. But thank you for being here with us every single day. We love having you as an everydayer. On today's show, we're bringing it back. It's time to make the case. And this time, we went a little bit of a different route, didn't we, Mike? We're going to do a making the case. And instead of telling you immediately who we're making the case for, we're making the case to trade Taylor Ward. And so we're going to start with, why trade Taylor Ward?
Well, here's a few reasons, John. Reason number one is we got to talk about the defensive outfield. The Angels have 5, well, maybe 4.5 defensive outfielders because Soler, there's a question about him, right? But They do have Ward, Trout, Moniak, Adele, and Soler. Soler is going to be probably the primary DH most of the time. But when he plays, his defensive numbers say that left field is his best spot. And it's likely that Mike Trout does play more left field this season. There hasn't been a decision made, no communication about that, but a lot of conversation about Mike Trout moving to left field, save his body, save his legs, all that conversation that we've had on this show and everydayers have had throughout the last couple of years. It means that center field is probably going to be Mickey Moniak's. And here's why. He's the best defensive center fielder on the team after Mike Trout. And actually his numbers are pretty comparative in the comparison. That's what I'm trying to say. In comparison to Mike Trout, they're pretty similar to that. So Moniak's best position is actually center field. He had 1 defensive run saved there last year. His outs above average was almost 10. Like he had a really great defensive showing in the outfield. And he's played the most innings in center field than anyone else on this team, over 800 innings last season. And Johnny, it's obvious that we're not going to take Joe Adele out of right field and put him into center field. The dude has finally figured out how to play a great defensive right field, so much so that he was in the Gold Glove conversation because he has improved so much. And you can see his natural athleticism come out in right field. So you're not going to move him over. So it would make sense from a defensive mix on this team that they would trade Taylor Ward to make some room. That's how the Angels could easily fill that outfield spot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Second, let's talk about Taylor Ward's offense. He had a career high in home runs and RBIs last season. His best spot was at the leadoff spot. In 42 games, he had a 278 average, 352 on base, 500 slugging, and an 852 OPS. But those numbers are good, Mike. But what the Halos need from left field is a middle of the order bat. And Ward, in the middle of the order, he struggled, according to recent history. His best power numbers were there, however, 11 home runs, but he only had a 667 OPS. And the reason why we bring this up is that the Halos won't be without a quality leadoff guy if Ward is traded. You could put Nolan Shawnuel in that spot. It's actually his best spot in the lineup. He slashed 252, a 333 on base, and a 365 slugging with an OPS of 698 batting leadoff. It's where he scored the most runs. Naturally, that's going to happen when you're at the top. But he also walked the most there, and then he knocked in the most runs from the number 1 spot as well. So the Halos can fill that role easily too. And when you think about who's at the bottom of the order and they're on base, and you get somebody like Nolan Shonwell making contact or taking that necessary walk, he keeps the line moving. So it is a good idea to have him in that leadoff spot.
And Soler's going to be at the middle of this lineup. He's going to be 3, 4, or 5, right in the middle of this lineup. So you do have some power from him. Here's a third reason why I think trading Taylor Ward would be a good idea. He's set to make around $10 million in arbitration this year. That's another outfielder that they're paying double-digit salary to. And John, if they're able to reallocate that resource to help a different position on this team, I think that that's something that the Halos definitely need to do.
What position could you possibly be thinking of, Mike? I'm curious, and we're going to find out in the second segment. But before we get to that, fourth, Taylor Ward has 2 years of control left, and he's entering his age 30 season. That makes him very tradable at this point.
Yep.
Plus, if he finds the right team, he's going to be a great additional piece to any team that is already contending. They need a supplemental bat, not somebody that is a superstar. Mike, we've brought up the Guardians a lot on this show for a potential trade target for Taylor Ward, or a landing spot, I should say. And they have always seemed to have interest in him as well. And I'm thinking back to the trade deadline, really what kind of kept Taylor Ward from being traded, other than any hangups Perry Manassian or even Artie Moreno might have had, was the way he kind of fell off during the summer, right?
Yeah, he wasn't playing well, and then he finished the season playing really well. And talking about him being a piece, I think that that's actually what's best for Taylor Ward, because on the Angels, he's one of the best, right?
Yeah.
But on another team, especially a contending team, he's going to be the guy that is a supplement for the team that's already successful and doing really well. The pressure isn't going to be on him to come through. So it's almost a bonus when Taylor Ward comes through. And if Ward can figure out how to be the Taylor Ward from a few years ago, and really the Taylor Ward at the end of last season, where he was getting into his groove and he was hitting the ball, he was walking more, I think that Taylor Ward is incredibly valuable to a contending team, because him in the regular season, you kind of know what he's going to put up. But John, Taylor Ward in the playoffs, we don't know what that's going to be like. And I anticipate Taylor Ward in the playoffs, when the pressure's not fully on him and he's surrounded by some really good stars, he could be somebody that comes through when you're not expecting him to come through. Hey, we're going to intentionally walk this guy to get to Taylor Ward, but Taylor Ward's got a good eye. Taylor Ward's got a good bat. And I think he could be somebody that could really benefit a team that's eyeing potentially a long playoff run or even a World Series run this year.
Yeah. Think about 2022 and the way that season started. Was it 27-17 or something like that before they hit their losing streak and all the bad stuff happened? But you think about how the Angels got off to that start. Taylor Ward was a huge part of that. And that was also like his breakout party, right? That beginning of 2022 was when everybody started to take notice of what Taylor Ward was doing in Anaheim. But then, and this is to your point, Mike, think about the lineup that they had in 2022. You had Shohei Ohtani in that lineup. You had Mike Trout in that lineup, both healthy and contributing. Anthony Rendon wasn't hurt yet.
Yeah.
He's hitting left-handed home runs off Brett Phillips. Like he could still hit home runs back in 2022. And so when you surround Taylor Ward with capable players who are at the superstar level, right? You put him with a Jose Ramirez in Cleveland or something like that. Or a Naylor brother, right? You got the Naylor over at first base. You put him around pieces like that, I think he's going to shine. And I think that is kind of what makes him really valuable. You have this inexpensive player who's in his age 30 season. Remember, prime is 28 to 32, unless you're somebody like Juan Soto or Bobby Witt Jr. But for most players, they're entering their prime in that age 27 to 32 range. That's why I'm a big fan of keeping Rengifo around and offering him an extension, because we're just seeing the fruit of the labor coming out of that with Rengifo. And he's a very necessary part of the infield. But with Taylor Ward, he feels a bit more expendable, and for all of the reasons that you gave. Plus, with him out of the lineup and moving out of a leadoff spot, which is his best spot, that really opens up again, Nolan Schanuel to be leadoff. Maybe you have Neto at number 2. Maybe you have Trout at 3 and Soler at 4. It's a pretty good top 4 to start with. And maybe Ohapi's your 5th and, bring it on down the line from that point on. So it's really kind of an interesting lineup, even without Taylor Ward. What do you think of his value at this point? We've seen ups and downs. We've seen him battle injuries. We've seen him run into walls and get hit in the face. Last year was his full healthy season, and it had its share of ups and downs. But like you said, he finished strong. What does that do for his trade value at this point?
I think he's got a high trade value, and the reason why is because of the numbers that he will be asking for in arbitration, but also the years of control that you're not having to dump a whole lot of salary into him to keep him on your team. And John, I don't think that it would be such a downward slope in the season, so noticeable if he's on a team that has other players that were rising to the occasion and actually on the field. It probably wouldn't have been as noticeable if Mike Trout was still playing and if Anthony Rendon was still playing. So let's say that he's on the Dodgers, for example. You have Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani, and you have people around him that if he goes into a slump, it's not going to be so noticeable. And that's why I think he's a great piece for contending teams. And I don't think that people are going to look at him and say that he's not valuable. I think the question is going to be is how valuable. And that's going to be the tension of what you can actually get. And I think that's why he wasn't traded last offseason. Yeah, he had the slump. But I think that Perry Manassian was, how valuable is he? And quite honestly, I think what he found out was not as valuable as we think that he is. And they have to adjust expectations moving forward. So if they do trade him, they have to know like they're probably not going to get all of the dream that they want, but I think they can get a really good piece if they decide to be really smart about this.
Yeah, especially with the 2 years left under team control. So I think, again, now's the time to make that move. His value will only dwindle from this point forward as age sets in and as they start eating up that contract and the 2 years of team control that are remaining. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on Locked On Angels, so we talked about why they would trade Taylor Ward, but who should the Halos trade Ward for? We're going to get into that conversation in just a minute.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. They are the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and you can get tickets for anything faster and easier. They're obsessed with finding ways to save you money, not just for sports, but for concerts, comedy, theater, all sorts of things that are available to you. And when you download the app, you're going to find that they have exclusive in-app flash deals on select seats ahead of the time for the game or whatever event. So this is why you should have the app, because it alerts you, hey, there's a deal happening here. You want to go see Nate Bargatze, comedian? Man, they're going to have a deal for that. And he's worth seeing, by the way, because he's really hilarious.
If you're my wife, she's going to take me to musicals. That's what she likes to do. So Gametime hooks it up with the musicals as well.
Heck yeah, ain't nothing wrong with that. Hamilton's one of my favorites. And then you can save on zone deals. You choose the section. Gametime chooses the seats. They have all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature on and see the total right up front when you're getting ready to check out. No surprises. Of course, the panoramic view is great. You can see where your seats are going to be before you actually purchase them, so you can pick out the best seats for the best viewing, especially if you're going to a musical, right? And you have Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets and download this app today. Use our promo code when you do, Locked On MLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Gametime.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And every dayers, if you want to support the show, if you want to support Mike and I, head on over to the merch store, the Super Halo Bros merch store. We've got some great shirts. We've got some Angels-related merch there as well. The link is in the episode description. So if you want to support Mike and I directly, head on over to the store. Again, find the link in the episode description, whether you're watching or listening. And you can grab yourself a Halo Bro shirt. We've repped those on the show before. So check out those designs and see what you like. And maybe, get somebody a shirt for the holidays. They would love that. A Super Halo Bros Locked On Angels fan. There you go. Let's do it.
All right, so let's talk about who we would trade Taylor Ward for. Now, the obvious, and what everybody's going to say, right, and I would agree with this, is that the most obvious is that you trade Taylor Ward for a starting pitcher, right? You have a great value in Taylor Ward. Could you possibly get a great value in a starting pitcher? I think that that's what the Angels should at least first look at. I think you would agree with me, John. I think our everydayers would agree with me. However, if the Angels do that, they're likely going to have to add someone else to the trade, right? Taylor Ward and somebody else. And it's probably going to be somebody that you don't want to part with, at least right now. And so they have to ride that tension. Perry's got to figure that stuff out. So I decided that I think it would be good to see if we could maybe trade Taylor Ward for someone else and make it a 1-for-1 deal.
I love it. I love when teams do a 1-for-1 deal and everybody gets what they want. Brandon Marsh and Logan O'Hoppe
absolutely
comes to mind. Like, whenever there's a good 1-for-1 deal that's good for both teams, it's like, yeah, let's go baseball.
And so what if the Angels could get similar value, Taylor Ward type value, but not in the outfield, but at a different position? What if they could trade Taylor Ward and solve a big question mark in the infield, John? So thinking through those options, what if the Angels traded Taylor Ward for Alec Bohm?
Ooh,
what do you think about that?
I love it.
Okay,
you know what? That I've seen that be floated around a little bit, so I'm glad that that's what you're bringing to the table on today's show. Let's do a little background deep dive on Bohm. Alec Bohm's a third baseman who plays for the Phillies, and he could be the everyday third baseman for the Halos. It solves the Rendon issue by placing him ahead of Rendon in the pecking order. Rendon goes to the bench. It incentivizes Rendon to try and stay healthy and play quality baseball. Now, we have our doubts, certainly, about that, but maybe even create some value for Rendon if he does do one of those things. And again, we have our doubts about that as well. But I really like this idea, Mike. Again, you're getting a young third baseman kind of around equal value to Taylor Ward. What do you say?
Yeah, here's what makes that move attractive. Bohm is 2 years younger than Ward. He's entering his age 28 season. Ward's entering his age 30 season. He's receiving $2 million less than what Ward is believed to be getting this season in arbitration. Bohm right now is at $8.1 million, and Ward's believed to get around $10.5 million. Bohm plays third base, which is incredible because we have not had somebody who we've been excited about at third base. Even when they signed Anthony Rendon, he really hasn't come through for us. And this is a hole that the Angels need to fill. And here's my thinking along these lines too, John. With the Neto injury, if you get Bohm to play third, this allows Rengifo and Newman to play shortstop and second base. When Neto comes back, Rengifo can move to second base, which is his best spot. And then your left side of the infield is Bohm and Neto. And so you have a solid infield, and you have Kevin Newman playing behind those guys, filling in for those guys, and you're suddenly set up with a great defense. And here's why I think Bohm is a good solution, John. He had his best defensive season at third base last year. 4 outs above average. He also had a really great bat that will be perfect for this Halos lineup. Here's his slash line from last year. 280, 332 on base, 488 slugging, and a 779 OPS. He had an OPS plus of 117. He hit 15 home runs. Here's what was really attractive, and I know many people don't like this stat. I love RBIs. He had 97 RBIs for the second year in a row. And then I also love this, John, 44 doubles. And I'm a big believer in that the home run can kind of be a rally killer.
Sure.
But to have somebody with 44 doubles in your lineup, that's not somebody that kills the rally. That's somebody that turns the lineup over and continues to get runs around, off the base, scoring, and then moves the lineup to the next guy in the lineup. And Bohm was the third base starter for the NL All-Star last season. So I think all of the metrics actually are in the right direction on the field for Alec Bohm. But John, there's a story, there's rumors, there's issues as to why Bohm would potentially be available, and it's because of his attitude, right?
Yeah, some attitude issues have come up recently out of Phillies land. And Tim Kelly, the beat writer for the Phillies, wrote that there's some people around the organization that aren't huge fans of the way he acts. Kelly writes that Bohm has had some emotional outbursts on the field, like throwing his helmet. He was removed from a playoff game, and it wasn't because of his performance on the field. People say it was because of his attitude in the dugout. Both Buster Olney and Jeff Passan have said what we're hearing from other teams is, yeah, he's going to be traded. Mike, was he the one who said, I freaking hate it here? And it was like, you could read his mouth on TV. Yeah.
I believe it was him.
And he didn't say freaking.
No.
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
So there's something there. And I don't know if it's a him problem, a Phillies problem, but man, there's something to that. Before we get into that conversation of whether that makes us pause a little bit.
Yeah.
I do want to point out, I went to FanGraphs and I went to the offensive stats and output of all the teams this year. And the Phillies had a 97 weighted runs created plus collectively from the outfield this season. Now, LA Angels, sorry, it says LAA right in front of me. That's why I did that. I'm Ron Burgundy. They had a 93 weighted runs created plus in the outfield. And so for the Phillies, there has been talk about moving somebody like Brandon Marsh. Like the Phillies are talking about shaking things up in Philadelphia. And so if you have a lineup with Taylor Ward in there with somebody like Bryce Harper, who's going to be the superstar, you've got Kyle Schwarber, you've got Nick Castellanos, who, again, always hits a home run during world crises and tragedies.
Right.
You got Real Muto, who they might be thinking of moving as well. But all of that to say, this is a lineup that kind of hides Taylor Ward well, and I think would get him back to that early 2022 where he's not the threat in the lineup. He's surrounded by stars in Philadelphia, and I think that he can add to that WRC plus that the Phillies had out of the outfield this season. So all that to say, is there any hesitation to you in terms of Alec Bohm coming over and being a bit of a problem? What do you think there?
I think what we're seeing from Alec Bohm is a competitive spirit. And I think that because he's in a situation where, gosh, the intensity is high and you have really great superstars and the goal is always to win the World Series. Dave Dombrowski's their GM. He's going to fill that third base spot really well, right? And so I think with Alec Bohm, bringing some of that energy that also can be translated on the field, I think will be pretty good for this Halo team, because when you look at like Neto and you look at O'Hoppe, they really want to win. They're sitting on the field watching these other teams celebrate, but it does kind of feel like there's the Neto O'Hoppe category and then there's everybody else, right? And I think that what bringing Bohm in could do is put him in the Neto and O'Hoppe category of we're feisty, we're fiery, we want to win. I'm going to say something, and I don't know if I believe it. So let me just say it, and then and then you tell me. If Rendon's on the field, I think Rendon is in the Neto and O'Hoppe category from a feisty standpoint, from a fiery standpoint, right? Because he's the guy that's telling the fans, knock it off. He's the guy in front of the fight and slapping,
Jesse Winker.
Right? Like that type of player is great. The problem with the Angels is they don't have somebody on the field that's doing that as well.
Sure.
It's not somebody, it's always somebody on the bench. It's Mike Trout on the bench. He's never on the field performing. I think that Bohm falls into that fiery, excitable, I want to win. Gosh, let's stop losing. Let's stop complaining. The things that they're complaining about with him on the field is he's throwing his helmet. He's striking out and he's pissed about that, right? And quite honestly, that might be irritable in Philadelphia, but in Anaheim, I think fans would go, yeah,
you're not wrong.
We need somebody like that. And here's the difference. I know somebody might bring up Patrick Sandoval. Patrick Sandoval walks out there already kind of a head case, right?
He's already pissed about lunch.
And he's not putting up the numbers. Bohm's putting up the numbers. And doesn't winning solve everything? Good numbers solves a lot of, it's like salve for the soul. If somebody is just a terrible human, but they hit home runs, we're kind of like, you know what I mean? And so I don't think he's a terrible human. I just think that he's probably just fiery and can get on people's nerves. And maybe with a Bryce Harper, I mean, Harper's had issues with teammates in the past. And so maybe some of that fieriness happens in the dugout and Bohm said something. And so what do you do if it's between Harper and Bohm, or if it's, Schwarber, but you're going to sit Bohm. He's not your star. And so I think that this could actually be a good pot stir for the Halos. And I think we need a little bit of dynamite in the midst of this sleepy bear cave, right? And the Angels need a wake-up call. And I think this trade could be potentially something that could do that.
Look, get him around Ron Washington and that crew and the coaching staff, and I think that you can contain the drama that comes along with it. That's a lot different than what was happening with Phil Nevin when he was in charge. I think we saw a lot of things get more contained this season. And to your point about Rendon, I mean, the guy was out there doing the Washington drills in spring training. Like Washington put Rendon to work. And even though Rendon couldn't stay on the field, you could see an attitude shift. He's not running around avoiding reporters and saying no habla inglés. There was a different attitude in the locker room and in the dugout. And I think that if Bohm comes to that environment that Ron Washington has created over the last year, I think that could be really significant for him.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The big question, John, is would you put $5 on the Angels trading Taylor Ward for Alec Bohm so that you could get the $150? Would you do it? Would you do it right now?
Yeah, I'd put $5 on that. It's a cup of coffee, literally a cup of coffee.
Heck yeah. And if you win, $150 right into your pocket, and FanDuel is ready to give that to you. They have everything that you need.
30 cups of coffee.
Wow. Yeah. Well, maybe 5 cups of coffee if you're going to Starbucks. But if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, or a hunch in the middle of the season, or you're like, I wonder what the stats are on that, if I can make a bet on that, FanDuel has got you covered. All of the information is on the same page with all the stats. You can make the bets there. Just visit their website today, FanDuel.com, and then download their app. And if you do, you can bet $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, Mike. So after all of this discussion of why it would make sense to trade Taylor Ward, but also trade him specifically for Alec Bohm, do you think the Halos should actually make this trade? And do you think they would make this trade? So should, could, would, what do you say?
I'm trying to put my feelings aside because it's really hard to do.
I would do it. I'm just going to say I would 100% do this. I actually think it makes sense for both sides. I think it would benefit everybody involved from a playing standpoint, from an on the field standpoint, a team standpoint. My hesitation is I don't know if the Angels would do it.
That's where I'm wrestling, right? Like when you look at things that happen around the world, you want to say, oh yeah, of course this is going to happen. But then you're like, but how will this really play out? Right?
It makes so much sense.
I think it does.
Yeah. But at the same time, it feels like, you saw, I think, a comment from Robert Murray, a fan sided, saying, well, it doesn't seem like the Angels would trade Taylor Ward or Luis Rengifo. And I'm not saying Robert Murray's 100% right all the time, but it's those kinds of dialogues and narratives that make me go, come on, guys, just do something. At least inquire about it, right?
I think that they would do something like this. I think they should do something like this. Obviously, they could. I think that this could be really probably would be more on if the Phillies would want to trade Bohm, and if somebody like Ward is a possibility, they maybe would look more towards maybe a Rengifo to replace Bohm in the infield. Who knows what they would do? But I just think that the Angels need to infuse this team with some fresh faces that are actually going to put up some good numbers and perform on the field. And that's why I would say first decision needs to be a starting pitcher. Mm-hmm. But I think that they could make value for value, take some value out of the outfield and put it at third base for this team. Yeah. And I think Bohm would be dearly loved in Southern California. Angel third basemen are always dearly loved in Southern California, right? Sean Figgins was there. Troy Gloss was there. I mean, you can go back to even when Gary Gaetti was here. They're
Mark Trumbo during Jared Weaver's no-hitter for some reason. That happened. Right.
And I think, honestly, John, I would be curious as to how Perry values Taylor Ward, because I'm not a unfan, but I'm also not a fan, right? Like, I mean, I'm neutral on Taylor Ward, kind of like his defense. I'm neutral on Taylor Ward.
Yeah.
I just think that you have to utilize some of the guys who have been on this team who have performed, but they're not going to set the world on fire. They're not going to be game changers. And if you can get some great value for them that will infuse your roster in a different area with great value and performance, you have to do that, right?
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I feel like you and I and our everydayers and Angel fans understand who Taylor Ward is better than anybody else. It seems like every year, I think it's Jake over on John Boy will be like, "Oh, Taylor Ward, watch out for that guy." And I'm like, yeah, but you weren't watching the other 5 months of the season, bro.
Right.
Like, that's not what you're doing. At the same time, you have, bozos from Barstool chiming in about the Angels and what they've done so far. And it's like, you have no possible comprehension of what the Angels need and what they're doing and why these moves make sense. You and I and the people who tune in and the people who listen and the people who talk Angels day to day, they all understand who Taylor Ward is. And again, he's not an offensive player. He's not a bad player.
Right.
He's Taylor Ward, right? And sometimes he'll hit you the clutch home run and sometimes he won't. And if the narrative out there is that other teams are interested in him, want him, and will give up something significant for him, then you got to do it. I mean, you got to strike when the iron is hot. And if the market is bullish on Taylor Ward, then you gotta see what's out there and put your feelers out there and say what you can get back for him, right?
Yeah. And to your point about Ron Washington, take a fiery, feisty guy and put him under the leadership of Ron Washington. That's what's attractive about this team. I think Ron is an attractive manager and a fun guy to be around.
He is a handsome dude.
and I think that he is a good guy that will help you to be better. And so that really incentivizes, I think, this trade. And this is how I think the Angels are going to get some quality players to come to Anaheim. I know we made a whole pitch about that they're not off the table. We might have to go extra year and some more money. But I think trades like this is what will be a game changer for this team. Imagine Alec Bohm and Jorge Soler with a healthy Mike Trout in this lineup, with Mickey Moniak getting consistent at bats, Joe Adell having another season under his belt. I really like this. I really do like this. And I think that the Angels need to do something like this to infuse this roster with some lightning, with some thunder. Bring it, because we need it, because this team has been so sleepy the last 10 years.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you talked about from an offensive standpoint. I'd say from an infield standpoint, I would love to see Bohm, Neto, Rengifo, or Newman, and then Sean Noel over at first. Man, I would love to see that kind of infield. I really hope that this could be something the Angels do. Look, Perry signed d'Arnaud after my GM's show, so perhaps, Mike, Perry, we know you're out there if you're listening. Thanks for being in every day. Or consider Bohm. I think that could be a great move for the Halos.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today, Perry. And for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Our friend Sully's going to give you a blend of humor and baseball and keep you updated through every rumor and every story all throughout the offseason. You can find his show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, thanks for being here today. If you want to give us a follow on Twitter, you can do so at Locked On Angels. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Super Halo Bros. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show. Get in the comments section on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you and be part of the discussion with you. Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Let's make the case again. I really
love
like
making the case.
Now, should we tell them, or should we?
I think we should, wait and see. That's what I like. Yeah.
We're going to make the case. We're going to make another good case.
How about this? Starting pitching. That's what we'll say.
Yes. Making a case for starting pitching and what the Angels can do. Going to talk some trades. It's going to be good. So join us tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right. Looking forward to that. We hope you'll come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody. And we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Chuck Finley. They're going to get Chuck Finley. Mark Langston. Jim Abbott's coming back.
I love it.